How's it going, everybody? Welcome. Another edition of the Wednesday Album Club on Heavy Metallurgy. We were here yesterday. We had a great long discussion of Megaton Sword. It was kind of funny, Kellen. Alan texted me. He's like, I can share this if I can find it. Y'all spent 166 minutes talking about a band with 106 minutes of recorded music.
Sure. Hating on Megaton Sword. He's just a hater.
Yeah, he's a hater. Leave the hall, Alan.
Professor, you're not welcome here. You can move on.
Leave the hall. Yes. But we had a good time last night. It was a good turnout for an impromptu album spotlight. But we're here on our regular scheduled hours and joined by my three esteemed co-hosts. We've got Jim is back from his trip to Chicago. Hope you had a good one. How you doing, Jim?
Doing good. It's good to be back. Enjoyed watching the show after its completion last week. You guys are great. The new Metallica, not so much, but hey.
What can you do?
Whatever, hater.
That's right, with a capital hate.
TJ, how's it going with you? Everything good?
Oh man, I cut my finger opening a box of chicken earlier, but it was fried chicken, so it's stuff. It's just the struggle is real, man. The struggle is real.
The struggle.
But
for
I got
sustenance.
in there. I got in there. Look at me. I'm still starving.
Do what we have to do for the fried food.
In Kentucky, Kellen's going to take you for a little run. I think that's on the docket.
Yeah, I'll get about 2 feet and die. Mr. Freaking paper mache lungs over here. It's like, yeah, we'll jog. We'll do some jogging.
Well, there's plenty of fried chicken to come along over here in Kentucky. So
maybe if you just leave a trail of fried chicken, it'll keep him push get to the next piece.
Right. Be like E.T. and Reese's Pieces, follow me into the closet, right?
But Kellen, it's good to see you again. Long time no see. What's been going on since last night?
And making some an interesting shift. We moved from epic heavy metal last night. We're moving to some grindcore.
Yep, absolutely. Which we'll get into it here real quick. Rotten Sound was formed in Vasa, Finland in 1993. 30 years and 8 full-length albums. And a handful of lineup changes later, vocalist Keijo Niinima and guitarist Mika Aalto have kept the uncompromising spirit of Rotten Sound alive and moving forward. They just released a album in March called Apocalypse on Seized and Missed Records. We are talking today about 2002's Murderworks. It's their third album, and it came out originally on Necropolis Death Vomit Records. Death Vomit was a subsidiary of Necropolis. So this is where we're at, and let's talk about first impressions. Jim.
Well, I'm very familiar with Rotten Sound. Covered some of their stuff in the past for Worm Gear, and did a deep dive on them back in the day, to prepare for that. So, it was exactly what I expected. Kind of like that, Swedish guitar sound with blast beats, political lyrics. But having said that, when I hear Rotten Sound, they just sound like Rotten Sound to me. There's a lot of grindcore out there, but for some reason, these guys to me stand out. I think they have their own take on the genre. I really like, the drums are very ferocious on this record, and they grabbed me very quickly. Because I wasn't as familiar with Murderworks as I was some of their stuff that came after. So I really enjoyed it, and spun it several times, and I'm excited to dive in with you guys on it. So.
TJ, how about you?
Yeah, I've known about this band for a long time. I like me some grindcore. I've got several different things. I've been a Napalm Death fan since way back, and I didn't start as early as some people. I mean, I started with them on Harmony Corruption, you know, and then worked my way forward and backward, as it were, and then they got weird in the middle, and then kind of came back to form. But that aside, you know, I wasn't shocked by anything going on here at all. My first impressions is this is exactly what I know the band to be. And I was, you know, when Kellen picked it, I thought that was really cool. I was looking forward to listening to this. So yeah, you know, my first impressions are this is looking forward to digging in for sure.
Kellen, obviously you like it. You picked it.
Yeah, I mean, Rotten Sound so I guess the impetus for me here is after last week, I kind of needed a good wake up call. I kind of felt like I was wading through a fog of mediocrity with 72 seasons, and
Yeah,
but I guess the backdrop of that was this is my high school years. So just in terms of comparison, like thinking about bands when you were younger, like I had most of my friends when I was in high school really into punk, and they were getting into grindcore. And when I would gravitate to something like Rotten Sound, I picked that up and play it, and they'd be like, "That's too much metal for us." And that was kind of an interesting. It was a first real point of divergence where I realized like that was what I was hungry for. Rotten Sound was like the band that, or amongst others that were coming around this time period, that were doing yes, grindcore, but it was also part of a greater sort of exposure to metal generally for me.
That we're doing
yes. Oh, okay. So yeah, I wanted to go back and kind of revisit some of my high school years and kind of give us something a little bit different. I don't think we've covered a grindcore record so far on the album club. So
I don't think we have. I think you're right.
well, Werewolves is kind of a grind band.
Sure.
I mean,
Kinda, yeah.
I mean, to this extreme, no. I mean, they obviously the songs are longer. They mix it up a little more. Death grind probably more apropos, but still, yeah. This pure grind, yeah. I guess Kellen you're probably right.
all right.
For me, I mean, there's no surprise here. I mean, I actually owned the CD, which I was glad to read. I haven't touched the CD since it came out 21 years ago. So it was kind of nice to wipe the dust off of it and throw it in the player and listen to it. I think we're getting a little off the rails here calling this a grindcore band. It's easy to do so. Grindcore for me has got a strong punk persona to it. This is death grind. If we're gonna start, you know, slicing and dicing the laying down the proper terminology. Yeah, there's elements of grind on here, the exacting blast beats, but the HM2 guitar, for those who don't know what HM2 is, you might hear a lot of people talk about it if you don't play guitar. It is a Boss. It's a distortion pedal made by Boss back in the day. It was called the heavy metal pedal, and they called it, the abbreviation was HM2. So you hear everybody talk about the HM2 tone. Someone in Sweden discovered if you cranked all the buttons on it all the way to the right, it made this chainsaw guitar tone that, you know, Entombed, Dismember, Rotten Sound. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of bands at this point have employed in their arsenal, and it's a great tone, great characteristic. Yeah, I mean, this to me is a solid death grind record, and we'll get into it, but I think it's really good, but I don't think it's overly exceptional. I would rather listen to Nazem. Nazem's Inhale Exhale to me is a beacon of this genre. That is just, they write with such a catchy flair. There's little twists and turns in their music that really stand out. And this is solid, straight in your face attack, brutalism, which is great. It's great. No complaints. I like the record. I have no complaints, but we'll get into it. Anyway, Kellen, you had we were talking about a little side note here.
Yeah. I thought I wanted to get your opinion about this time period. So I can, whether you want to call it death grind, that's totally fair. I think the guitar tone is definitely coming from a death metal world.
Sure.
And when we talk about the songwriting here, there's definitely also plenty of metal flair and technicality that probably would challenge a lot of the punk sort of association with grindcore. But I guess what I was thinking about was the juxtaposition between death metal and grindcore at this time in metal's history. For a lot of fans, I would say there's like a critical understanding where death metal seems to have its peak somewhere in the early to mid 90s and then sort of falls off. I don't subscribe to that just because I'm not of that generation, but I was curious to see if everyone here thought that grindcore had the same, or death grind for this example, if it was a time period where there was continual artistic sort of experimentation and discovery, where that sort of fall off did not happen in the same way for the genre. Or if you felt that this time period was enough about like artistic growth, where it doesn't share the same kind of historical trajectory as death metal. Because I feel like in my memory, when I was at this age, there was more pushback from the death metal community about all like the tech death that was emerging. But grindcore, I still like Nasum. This is kind of their era. I believe Inhale Exhale comes in 98.
Mm-hmm.
And the years that follow, you have all this weird sort of metalcore grind that's happening.
Like Candiria or Candira. No, Candira. Yeah. Candiria.
You have like a proliferation of more and more kind of like carcass worship happening as well. So I was just curious to see if you thought that grindcore and all the other sort of splinters that happen, like gore grind, etc., had a different kind of lifespan during this time period. So that was kind of what I was thinking about.
Okay. Who wants to go first? I can. Jim,
go for it, Marty.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
You talk about death metal. I don't need to be blown up for this. I'm not showing anything. Talk about death metal kind of running out. Death metal in the early 2000s, I think, kind of gets run over a bit by black metal. But if you look at it, it really evolves to bands like Christian and Nile. They really start pushing the envelope. Zahler always used to call them like turbo death bands. He called them turbo death bands. It's the super fast blasting and the super intricate. You're kind of leaving the musicianship has evolved to a point where, the old school death metal, where it's more riff based, catchy, memorable riffs, is kind of lost in super fast technical playing and a barrage of blast beats. And it's kind of prime for bands like Rotten Sound and Nasum and, a Suck, who I really, really, really like that band. Terrorizer is, to me, one of the best. I call that a grindcore record, even though it's got death metal elements. It still has the punk feel. It's really catchy. It's got old school death metal riffs in it. The songs are memorable. What happens, Nasum is still kind of memorable, but bands like this, they kind of lose. It's more about the attack. In a lot of ways, this strain of death grind is very much in line, in my brain anyway, with war metal. I like this better than war metal. War metal is just a rabid dog vocals and just a endless barrage of, a tank mowing you over. This is a little bit different. There's riffs going on here, but the focal point is very much the vocals and the drums. And I'm getting off topic here. I'm losing my train of thought. For this type of music, there was some innovators and experimentation going on. I often think of Brutal Truth. They're a band that started out pretty much a grind band. As they started getting really strange, whether they started, incorporating more Japanese hardcore influence into their sound, doing weird little jazzy things in there. The production got a little less death metal, a little bit more organic hardcore sounding. But a lot of bands didn't walk that path. I see Brutal Truth as innovators. I didn't always like where they went, but I always respected them for it, because they were kind of true. They started off death grind. They ended up being kind of grindcore as they progressed on. But the early 2000s, it just seemed like the evolution was a little less focused on experimentation and more honed in on mastering your craft. Exact drum blasts, super tech, intricate guitar work. I think that was the evolution. They upped the endurance of it. I don't know if I answered any of your question there or your hypothesis, but is that kind of in the ballpark you were shooting for?
Yeah, I mean, I think trying to think about what was happening with this particular genre at the time period, because I just, in terms of artistic growth, right, where I feel like death metal, that turbo stuff was going on for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but you have bands like Rotten Sound, but you also have this is the Agoraphoric Nosebleed. You also have the Pig Destroyers. Like it's so you have like the computerized sort of like drum machine stuff happening, but you also have like Last Days of Humanity. Like this, just all it is pinging snare and pitch shifted vocals.
Yep.
Like the Dutch scene is it's a time period where I feel there was a lot going on for grindcore and all the different ways it sort of splintered off, where I feel death metal to some degree, its sort of zenith of artistic growth is happening somewhere in 91 to 94 perhaps. So depending on who you talk to there, I just don't think grindcore necessarily follows the same timeline.
You're right, Frost, or Evan Maziko, Mazko. I can never pronounce his name. He did produce Murderworks. He was from Nasum. Jim, did you want to go on this? Sorry.
Yeah. Now, I pretty much, for grindcore, to me, it's all the stuff that leans towards the death metal side. I don't listen to the more punk side of grindcore, with the exception of Ass Suck. It's impossible to live in Florida and not jam on them. They're pretty beloved in St. Pete's, where they're from.
Awesome.
And they're great, so but yeah, so it's hard for me to comment intelligently on this, as I'm not a deep grindcore fan outside of your Pig Destroyers, Rotten Sound, Napalm, all the guys who lean over to the metal side. I do love all that stuff, but I kind of see what you're saying, Kellen. I do think when we think about everything that's kind of evolved to this day that we sort of love, what era does it point back to in death metal? For me, it does sort of point to like the mid 90s or so, and I do think that that grindcore in general has been more experimental, always, because of that punk edge, for better, for worse, for my own personal listening taste. It's when they are more metallic, if you will, in nature, that it perks my ears up, because I just being this kind of a fan, a lot of people like yourself came from punk, went to metal. With me, it was straight to metal, and punk was always on the outside, so for me, like, I'm going to stand on the other side of Marty and say what he sounds more, this doesn't excite me as much. Well, I'd rather listen to this more metallic style that Rotten Sound puts forth than any Brutal Truth any day, actually any era of theirs. What I like about this band, and I know I'm getting off topic here, but is I need a moment, I need something in there that I can grab onto and feel like I want to bang my head or something. And Rotten Sound gives that to me. Napalm Death gives that to me. Big Destroyer gives that to me. So even though I do think, seeing, grindcore on the periphery, because I was aware of the bands that cross over to my side, if you will, I saw that sort of experimentation, and I do think it happens kind of like later on, but I think that's naturally conducive to, like, the more metallic grindcore always sort of followed metal after, it was like metal riffs, blast beats, grindcore, that's how grindcore sort of, in my view, started with Napalm Death, more metallic riffs and blast beats. So to me, it's like it was always kind of metal first, and then grindcore takes and adapts some of that, like Carcass did later, shortly thereafter, I should say. But that metal was there, you know, and they took that and they infused it with punk and tons more speed, you know. And again, this is coming from somebody who's, you know, not a grindcore historian. I could be wrong, but from my perception as a metal fan, that's the way it always kind of seemed anyway. So.
Well, Napalm, I mean, I would say that like Scum and From Enslavement were very Japanese hardcore influenced. At certain points, especially Scum. It was just kind of a, you know, that blasting style was very sloppy and just over the top. And the metal riffs kind of came, well, they started to come in on From Enslavement and Mentally Murdered, but I don't know. I don't know where I'm going here. TJ.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I can answer. I don't know what. I'm just going to ramble on for a minute about it. I think, I mean, to me, you know,
chicken.
I'm gonna, you know, I see, you know, the 90s. I mean, it was transformative. I mean, to me, I mean, you got all these bands, you know, aping on other bands and making babies and coming up with other things and adopting styles and changing and evolving one way or the other. And you get from, you know, 95 and what, you know, like now I have to say, Jim, I'm surprised you don't like Brutal Truth's first record. That record slays, man. That record is so good.
I'll have to go back and check it out. I've just kind of checked them out over the years, and
yeah,
most of what I heard was the weird stuff Marty was talking about. You know,
Extreme.
The first one, man.
Him doing like sparky tools on the stage and the mic on it, and I was like, what?
After that, they lost me after that too. But again, to my point, it's like you see these bands, and then other people in the comments are bringing up Cephalic Carnage and stuff like that. And you just see this outward growth of these bands, but it's all, I think it's all part and parcel to the scene in general. Anyway, you have these bands that come up, and even like the early death metal bands from the early 90s and whatever, you know, the Swedish bands that were aping on Discharge real hard and stuff like that. I mean, how many Entomb riffs and Dismember riffs are direct, you know, toss-offs from Discharge riffs and stuff like that. I mean, that whole thing there's so much of it in there, and the punk influence. The punk influence is there. And even with this Murderworks record, it's like, listen, in the longer tracks, you start chewing on the ones that you can chew on a little harder. You know, it's like, oh, there it is. You know, you start hearing it more so in there. But I don't, you know, I think it's just the bands do what the bands do, and you know, the grind bands are no exception, and they all kind of move on in one direction or the other, and they're taking, you know, the death metal bands start adopting the grind stuff and bringing in the blast beats, and vice versa, and you know, the grind bands start writing longer song, you know, like Napalm and stuff, writing longer songs and stuff. So I think it's all kind of part of it. You know, I don't know if I'm really hitting any of this question right or not, but you know, and me personally, it was always kind of cool to see it. And you know, bands like again, like Napalm Death or Nazem, or like, you know, like what was Brujeria, you know, that was something that was cool that came out early on, and you know, that was kind of like that. He was in there, like, yeah, you know, so you know, I think, you know, there was growth and there was change, and I don't, you know, in the 2000s, you start seeing it, you know, it just moving farther up the food chain, so to speak, and you know, the dirtier bands trying to get dirtier or adopting other things. You know, Napalm Death, they went through this whole phase where, you know, like Diatribes and all that stuff.
They were groovy.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, I didn't hate that stuff, but I never, you know, I was like, I don't want to buy this. I don't, you know, it just was so weird, and they were listening to too much Swans and whatever. I don't know, but you know, and then, you know, then they put out, you know, they're like, oh, you know, Enemy of the Music Business and whatever, and they kind of went back, and they've been kind of there. They still, the new stuff, you can still, every once in a while, they still throw down some of that Diatribes era stuff a little bit, you know, the droney groovy stuff, but they still pretty much are still on track to what they've always kind of been. but so yeah, I don't know. The evolution and the falling off or growing or whatever. I mean, I think it's just all part of it, and there's been with anything else, and it's just all kind of there. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. So sorry.
So, Kellen, swinging around to you, you were mentioning in the chat like Botch, Dillinger, and Converge, all of which have elements of grind, but they're coming from a screamo kind of hardcore thing for me.
Yep, for sure. I think there's like an interesting sort of cross. Pig Destroyer does a split with Orchid, which is like a kind of screamo post-hardcore sort of deal. There was a weird sort of sense of like grindcore. You look at Extreme Noise Terror, like the bands that you were mentioning, some are like coming directly from crust. Like,
Extreme Noise Terror in particular.
Yeah. So it's like definitely rooted in incredibly sort of crust punk vibe. And then not only you get Rotten Sound, which is bringing in like some Swedish death metal kind of tone, you get this very kind of like pretty metalcore kind of artsy, whatever you want to call it. And then you get like the most grotesque version of gore grind emerging. Like it seemed to me like all of them were happening simultaneously, where it felt like a moment of artistic sort of growth and experimentation, where it started with something that was so clearly connected to something like Discharge, and had brought more sort of vicious, sort of extreme, drumming, for example, to the stage. Like you start to integrate sort of more technical blast beats into it. But at the same time, it's like really kind of sloppy, where when you listen to this Rotten Sound, it's a good kind of segue. The drumming, the proficiency here, technically, that is happening in terms of their songwriting is clearly coming from a kind of death metal mastery.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of where my head was at with this.
And it's really strange if you look how this album is straddling the fence. This is just a few breakdowns, a bass drop or two, and some pig squeals away from being slam. I mean, it's kind of in that the technical proficiency. I mean, the slam bands, say what you want about them, they're talented as shit, and they bring some really perplexing, cool riffs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is just one of those bands and albums that it's very much, it is what it is, but it could be a few little alterations. It could be something else, but it's really good. But is it a humongous standout? I guess is a big question. Well, I guess we'll get into that here in a minute. But let's discuss the musicality and composition of Murderworks. Jim.
Well, I loved it, man.
It's great. I think it's odd. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great.
It's got HM2 guitars, which I'm always a fan of. It's got, like I would say like almost over the top vocals, and just in terms of like how much he's giving in the performance. But what's really cool with this vocal here, man, is for me, it's clearly enunciated. Like I can understand what he's saying. And to be like that intense and to be clear is extremely difficult to do. And I really admire that he's not only doing it well, but he's doing it in a different language. I mean, with a couple of like, slight, mispronunciations here and there of some English words, but I mean, hell, I think he screams better, Finnish English than I do speaking it. So,
right.
Kudos to him. So I really like the vocals. I really also like, and this is what I like about grindcore and where I feel like, the biggest differentiator for me, the kind of grindcore I like, which is the death grind, the metal stuff, the differentiator besides the shortness of the songs and the attack is, the lyrical content. I like to kind of step back from, death and Satan. Yes. Believe it or not, every once in a while. And have some vocals that have a little bit of like social consciousness to them, and and these guys don't disappoint. I really love I think it's Revenge, which actually has the title track getting Murderworks for a while. It's about what I envision when I read those lyrics. It's like you're on one side of this army, the other guy's on that side. He thinks you're evil, you think he's evil, who's right? Nobody knows. It's like you're just programmed to believe that, you got to do this to, that this guy's your enemy. He's a bad guy, and at the end of the day, it's all bullshit. Why are we killing each other? You know what I mean? And I kind of like, that's just one example of the way that, even though you could say that their delivery in most terms is very concrete, with their lyrics, and in grindcore has to be because of the brevity. I still think that there's a little bit of, not a little bit, I would say there's a lot of thought in the way that they construct their lyrics and get their message across, to the point where I want to read all of it and understand, not just, what the music is, but also what they're singing about. And when I'm in the mood for that, grindcore is always good to deliver on that. And for something, that's for me, thoughtful. And, I think, so musicality and composition, these guys are great players. I would say the drummer, especially, he has some amazing tom work on this, man. Just, super fast, you got to pay attention to it because, we're getting in and out in 1 or 2 minutes, but the things he does on the drums, obviously he's good at blasting. You can't be a good grindcore band and not, but it's what he does on the toms. It's, I think, really intriguing. And for me as a metalhead, it's like, too fast to maybe bang my head too, but if you were to slow it down to half speed, there's some really headbanging style, drum work going on there, all over the toms, and the way he bashes his China, man, he must break one every show. I mean, because it's just he's just destroying it. He's attacking it, and I love that. I just feel like I felt the energy of the percussion really coming through to me. Not just through the blast, but the attack on the drums overall. And another thing that I got to really call out is the bass sound is intriguing here. I feel like it's kind of scooped. The low end is really there. At the low end, there's no mids though, so it doesn't really cut through so much. You got to have some mids to cut through HM2 distortion pedals, I think. But the distortion is so heavy, it just ripples at the top of their rotten sound. Haha, see what I did there? It really ripples at the top, and it just makes it more explosive and more bombastic. And I would venture to say that Nails ripped this style off years later. I mean, where it's there's so much distortion going on, the whole sound overall sounds distorted, and there's HM2 and all that. Like I think that band owes a lot to Rotten Sound. I mean, in their approach, in their overall, tone and everything. But I think that Rotten Sound do it better. So I think that these guys, compositionally, the riffs are great. They're interesting. They are death grind. Maybe not at reinventing the wheel, but the way that this guy, stitches together his riffs are interesting for me throughout, where I wanted to listen again. I wanted to capture it. You got a good grind song when it goes by so fast, you want to hear it again. And I felt that way about a lot of songs on this. And that was due to the riffs, the lyrics and everything that these guys had on offer. So for me, being a metal fan who likes some grind, this is what I'm looking for when I want to hear grindcore. I'm looking for this. So I think that these guys deliver on all fronts, for what I define as being good, metalized grindcore. These guys have that composition down, and do it right.
Right on. TJ.
I think, I mean, to me, it's, bear with me, I'm tired. So, no, these guys are absolutely crushing. And, I find, I mean, like, the guitar work in this, they're not doing anything intricate or extraordinary. Everything is it fits where it needs to fit. The riffs are solid, they're good. I think that they're because it's like they don't need to be anything else, because the other, it's like the music in this kind of carries one dimension. It's very kind of just on point, and it is what it is, and it's good. The riffs are good, and the grinding and stuff, it's all perfect. But then it's just all kind of one. But then you bring in the ferocity of the performance, and it adds just another layer to this, because this whole record, even the couple songs near the middle end where they do slow it down just a little bit and let you chew for a minute, even there, the performances are just so absolutely crushing that it adds a whole other kind of dimension to the tracks. The drumming is just absolutely it's murderous. The guy is an absolute beast.
Yeah.
And then lyrically and everything, it is nothing. It didn't, nothing that surprises me. Social political stuff with a few little weird spins on stuff. And typical stuff that I'm used to with a lot of these bands, and then it's fine. It is what it is. I don't get too involved in any of that. But I mean, I don't have any real complaints or any. The everything that they did in here just works so well, and they deliver. I mean, Murderworks is such a to take it as for what they're doing in this record. It's just so crushing and punishing, and and they're so good at it. And again, too, like Jim says, bands like Nails, which I think Nails is great. But I can definitely, now you bring it up, it's like I can see where it's like, yeah, but I think they're wearing their influence of this band on their sleeve a little bit with that, because they kind of come across like this in some ways too. So yeah, I mean, musicality and composition, total thumbs up on this for sure. Just crushing.
All right, Kellen.
Yeah, this is grindcore. It's like one of those things where you only have 3-4 ingredients for the recipe, and you just need to get those right. Like if you get that correct, you got me pleased.
Right.
And so, I think that in principle sounds simple, but rarely is it executed with a way where when Jim's mentioning you want to go back and listen to that track, there's so many moments on this where you're going through 1 minute long sort of brutal attack songs. When you get a well-placed, well-crafted riff, the reward is it's one of those things where it's difficult to articulate that because it sounds so simple, but just emotionally, the impact that it has when you're listening to something like this. I spun it, it's only 28 minutes long, so I was able to spin it a bunch, especially after listening to 77 minutes of Metallica. And it was so many times during the course of this, I was like, man, that riff is just right in the correct spot. And it's very much like death metal, kind of groovy. There's even one point where I think you mentioned sort of a slam moment where it's like a hardcore beatdown section on the song. But I can't overstate sort of the dynamic success that they can pull off on this record. And I 100% agree. I understand that you got into Nasum. They're sort of sibling bands, in my opinion. I think when I forget his name, the lead singer for Nasum, when he died,
But he's the guy that produced this, Maziko, or how in the hell do you say it? Misko. I don't know.
Nailed it. But when he passed away, the
Rest in
vocalist
peace.
from Rotten Sound has come in and performed. There's a certain kind of relationship between the two bands. I think they're from the same era. They have a similar sound. Just incredibly well crafted, simplistic riffs that there's tons of emotional reward on the course of this listen. The drum performance. Okay, so I will tip my hat to you here, Marty, because we've talked about this drummer Kai Hato. Once again, I don't know, but he's playing. So he at this time is also playing in Winter Sun,
and Nightwish.
And yes, and that was the point I was going to make,
which is the antithesis of Rotten Sound.
Badass drummer, and Nightwish recruits him. I'm sure his paychecks are pretty nice compared to.
This guy say he's got to pay his bills.
Yeah. But it's just one of those things where he's a incredible drummer, but his skill set, he's got that much sort of headroom for his ability to sort of work out. And there's a couple of times here, even like when they get a groovier section where he gets a chance to sort of play around the kit a little bit. It's only for, a handful of whatever bars, but it's one of those things where at any point, if this record was going to sort of languish, he like pushes it along. I never felt at any point in time that it lacked energy or kick. So crushing tons of velocity kind of grindcore. Yeah, for sure.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm coming off maybe sound a little sourpuss about this record. I'm not. I think it's great. And it really harkens back, takes me back to like the glory years of the Relapse, when Relapse was, this could have been on Relapse. Perfect fit. I mean, obviously they had Nazem, and I think I like Nazem's songwriting a little bit more. It's a little bit more catchy when it needs to be, but this record, the songwriting and the composition, it's dead on. It's the drumming again is perfection. It's lethal. This whole thing, it's like attack until you get up to about track 10, and then the death riffs start to come in. They ease off the throttle a little bit and start introducing more of a double bass, and you can actually start to hear the riffs more. And that's where this record really kind of starts to open up for me, where they start to break up the attack. They start offering, hey, Chromie, what's up, man? It's where they start to open up and actually show off that guitar tone. I mean, we'll talk about this in production, but I've listened to this a lot this week on my JBL Bluetooth thing, which has got a bass friendly EQ curve in it. And then in my vehicle, which I was noticing today as I was driving around listening to this loudly, all you can hear in the vehicle is vocals and drums. Couldn't hear any guitars until the drums, like the breaks where the guitar kicks in before everything kicks in again. I'm like, there's a guitar. It sounds killer. It sounds amazing. But in the vehicle, it sounds like it was mixed for live. Most live sound engineers, they always mix the bass or the drums and the vocals too loud. But then I was listening to it on headphones. I'm like, oh, there are guitar riffs on this record. Surprise. And it's just, depending on where you listen to it, I think out and about in a car maybe isn't the best place for this, other than it's, it feeds the road rage and keeps you going down the road. But I think the songwriting is dead on. I think stylistically, they're not. If you were to put these guys in a lineup of other bands like this, I'd have a hard time saying it was Rotten Sound. But that's not necessarily a bad thing either. Not every single band that rips is going to be 100% unique. As we all know from doing this for a long time, the more unique a band, the less we probably are inspired to listen to it after the wow factor. At the end of the day, in Death Grind, these guys are nailing it. They're really well-written songs. What do we got is next? I can never remember. Production. Jim.
Yeah, I was well, as you were relaying that story, I was like, man, I didn't have trouble hearing the guitars at all, but then I've only been listening to them on headphones.
Like I said, I put on the headphones and listen to them, like, wow, there's guitars here. And your mid-range comment is true. Without the mid-range, I wouldn't be able to hear it at all. But in the car, all I could hear was drums and vocals. Anyway, sorry.
No, and it makes sense, because generally for me, I don't listen to grindcore in cars for that reason. For some reason, like just the speed and the style doesn't. I don't think it meshes well for cutting through for road noise for me. So and there are exceptions, like we've mentioned Harmony, Corruption, and Pig Destroyer definitely has a very thick guitar sound where they push the guitars up. But most grind bands, like in other albums from Napalm, like Utopia Banished, which is probably my favorite. I don't listen to that in the car because I can't really hear it as well. But headphones, this band and most metal tinge grindcore bands, I think sound fantastic,
Crushing, yeah.
And so wait, which section are we doing?
Production.
Production, yes. Okay, yeah. And so I already alluded to it. With the very distorted bass, it kind of gives it that kind of crumply sound all the way through, and I like that. I like that the speakers break up, with just, the ferocity that's going on. I think it matches, the intent of this band, both sonically and lyrically, to have that sort of, distortion front sound. And I love the way the drums are interesting to me. Like I feel like the drums are the mid range here. The bass is scooped. The guitars are kind of scooped. The local vocals are in the higher frequencies, but the drums kind of sit right there in the mids, and they're ever present, but not overbearing. I'm looking at you, Lars Ulrich, kick drum sound. It's not. I feel like each section of the kit is very balanced, and where I can hear like the toms like nearly as well as I can the snare, which is rare on any recording. So, and especially on a grind record, I think that's probably no small feat to achieve that. To have a well-rounded drum kit sound, so I think that it all comes together. I really have 90% no complaints about the production. The only thing I would say is, because of that scoop of the bass, it makes it a little bit harder to make out what he's doing. If you really pay attention, and if you can sort of hear his notes, the higher end, there you can hear his, what he's doing in the higher frequencies there, but it really gets drowned out a lot because it's so scooped. So I would have preferred some more mid-range in the bass to make it a little more present. The distortion's great, the low end's great, but I would sacrifice some of that super low end that he got on the bass for some highs, where we can kind of like attenuate better to what he's actually doing. So bass sound then good but not great, but in every other aspect, I think that this is a great grind sound for me. This as I mentioned before, this is kind of what I look for. And no complaints. I think they did a great job.
All right, TJ.
Yeah, I think overall the production on this was really good, considering what they're trying to capture on tape. I mean, something this ferocious, that kind of guitar tone, the HM2 pedal, that tone, it's for the uninitiated. It's kind of unwieldy, and trying to get it to obey and transfer to tape in a way that's sonically appealing and discernible can be tough.
When you stop playing, it's like a squeal of feedback.
Yeah, it's pretty, and it's they do a really good job with it. It's to me,
what's up, Ben?
It's not my first choice for guitar tone for this style of music, but they make it work. And it's really cool. And I agree with Jim too. I was struggling to really, the bass lives in the mix on this, but it's not something that you can really pull out of it when you're trying to listen to it. They definitely should have hit it with more mid-range attack so that the bass could have had more of its own identity in these songs. But again, it may very well have been there, that's where they wanted it. So who knows? But I mean, I think that, it's blurry in spots, but that's to be expected with something like this. Especially going back, what is it, 20 years or whatever, for the production.
21 years.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So, I think that by and large, it's a pretty stellar production for this. And I really enjoyed it. I don't really have any real complaints about it at all. There's not much you can say. It delivers on the goods with everything else that's going on this. So, yeah.
All right. Kellen.
Yeah. Nasty guitar tone. I was interested to get Jim's thoughts because he's always paying attention to the bass here. I agree. There is sort of just really the bottom end for me of this bass guitar. You don't hear sort of like that upper end register just because the guitar tone's just bellowing all over the place. But everything else, vocals and drums are coming through really clear. For me, at a grindcore vicious record like this, I am a little bit less concerned with well delineated instruments I just want the viciousness of the attack to come through clearly. And if it's a cohesive sort of voice, that's completely fine, where you don't have like individual instruments isolated. I do want to point out there's a weird moment, I think, on Lobotomy is the track.
That's a good song.
And it almost sounds like a guitar is trying to solo. It's like it's this weird trying to break through the mix and do something interesting. It's not like an impressive solo by any means, but it's like it tries to splinter off and create a little bit of a moment within the song, and it's just completely enveloped by the rest of the sort of guitar tone. So outside of that, I love how ferocious this record sounds. I think it completely matches what they're going for. So it was a success for me.
Having said, if I were to only have listened to this on the Bluetooth thing and the vehicle, I was already getting ready to tee off on the production. I was a wasted opportunity, because when the drums and everything drop out and you can hear the guitar, they did a really good job producing this HM2 thing. The guitar tone has got a lot of good grit to it, good bite, a snarl to it. You can tell what they're using to achieve that sound. But then listening on headphones, like I said, it was a complete game changer. I'm glad I took the time to do so. But balance is good. The guitar tone cuts over everything, which is great. Drums, the whole kit, you can hear it. It's really a well-produced, heavy as hell record. I really have zero complaints. Least favorite songs. Kellen, we'll start with you.
All right. So
hey, what's up? You didn't have to do that. Sorry.
It's all good.
Dude, you better get a second job to afford all this crap. Come on. Cheers. Thanks again.
The one, I guess, song that feels the two really short Insects and Suffer, I guess, are the songs that are like not bad, but you know, it's whatever. It's like a little blip on the radar of the course of this record. The songs that keep me coming back for more, there's plenty of them. Revenge, IQ, Lobotomy, Obey, Insane. All of them feature the same sort of like mid-paced groove or some sort of riff where the moment clears and they just give you something to TJ's point, chew on, right? There's just great moments on this record for all the havoc and chaos and, you know, blast beat ferocity. There's these moments of release and dynamic sort of realization. So those are my favorite tracks. There's a lot to choose from. I know I threw like 5 out there, but all feature a lot of the same things, which are sort of great dynamic shifts, well-written riffs, ferocious production, success.
All right, Jim.
Definitely, targets, targets, it comes out strong, and, I love the enunciation of this singer. You can understand what he's saying. There's so many cool lines. Doomed by damnation, loser, friendly God. That song, it's cracked me up, man. IQ is awesome. It's really hilarious. But Obey is definitely like the track that really does it for me. It's it's the most for me metal song. It's got a great mid-tempo start to it. And then just some really badass, headbang worthy riffs. 2 minutes in, the riffs that kick in there are just like, you want to break, sticks in your backyard. I don't know, something. But all, I mentioned earlier, like
Please make that video. Please make that video.
It's coming at the next Fat Camp, Marty. I'm going to be breaking sticks to Rotten Sound.
Gather kindling and just breaking.
Yeah, breaking up the kindling. Something's got to go in the bonfire, right, Marty? Come on. Yeah.
It's so random, like the chair wrestling in Gummo. It's like that's the only thing in that movie that made me laugh was a chair wrestling. This is a segment of people wrestling chairs. I'm just like,
Isn't Burzum on the soundtrack to Gumbo?
yeah, this is Bethlehem and a bunch of other ones. Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff like that. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Breaking.
No. But yeah, great riffs on that, and there was also again, like I mentioned earlier, great Tom's work on it. So I would say if anybody out there, you check out any song, I would say definitely check out Obey. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, Agony, which the singer from Nauseam appears on. They do guest vocals. They go back and forth on it, and it just happens to be, I'm sure his appearance helps. One of the best songs on the album. Great riffs on it. It sticks around long enough for you to really embrace it. So this album for me, it starts strong and it finishes really strong. And actually, I'll disagree with you a little there, Kellen. I like Suffer because it reminded me of, Napalm Death's famous "You Suffer," except they say "suffer alone." So I was like, hey, all right, it's their little, couple second long thing, little Napalm Death throwback. So no, and honestly, I don't have there isn't any tracks I don't like on this. There was one. There wasn't. I mean, one good thing about grindcore, nothing sticks around long enough if you don't like it, where you have a lingering, hatred in your mouth or bad taste in your mouth. So yeah, but definitely, standouts for me are Targets and track 10 Obey and the final track Agony. So.
All right, TJ.
Yeah, I thought Seeds was good. Obey, Lobotomy, all those songs have a little bit more meat on the bone, so to speak. I really did not dislike anything on this record. I like the short takes and all that stuff. Fun factoid, actually, before the Glorious Dead, before I ever hooked up with Marty, the Glorious Dead actually started as
I would rephrase that.
Yeah. what did I say? Hooked up with?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Before me and Marty, no, but before Marty and I started jamming together, I actually started the Glorious Dead as a one-man drum machine grind project in my living room, doing shit not that dissimilar to this. So I like all those 1 minute tracks and 30-second tracks. I just, I get a kick out of that stuff. I like the way the bands try to put it in and punctuate the rest of the record with that stuff. I think there's kind of an art to it. You can just throw in 20-second songs. It's like big deal. It can be dumb, but if you do it right, I think it's kind of cool. So, but yeah, again, Seeds is really good. It's a bit longer. Obey, it switches up, gets into the slower bits a little bit. And Lobotomy has some, a little bit of a groove in the killer, and gets into some of the more classic kind of riffs and stuff. So yeah, I don't got no dislikes on this at all. Otherwise.
Yep, me too. I have got I've got no complaints with songs. There's nothing on here like, oh, that song sucked. Nothing. It, like I said earlier on, Obey is when the album kind of shifts a little bit. They lessen the speed offensive and go for more of a double bass and let the riffs breathe a little bit more. And Lobotomy, another standout. I was here listening to the song and checking the track, like, this song rules. This is a good song. It had some more old school death riffs coming through there, and death metal riffs, not Death the band. But it's a well-produced album. It clips along really good, and at the end they give you a little bit of room to breathe, which is cool. And for that I like the way they pace the record. Clobber you over the head and then let you off the hook a little bit. So yeah, no real complaints. And we will end with Judgment. Final thoughts. TJ.
I give them an A. Great record. I really don't have any other. There's not really much I can add to it. I mean, the record speaks for itself. If you're into this stuff, it's definitely a recommendation. You can't go wrong with it, and it is good. This is a band that I've been aware of this band since way back, and I haven't really spent any real time with them until now, and regrettably, and I'll be going on a shopping bender before too long. I'm starting to feel the itch again, so getting my bills caught up. So going on the list, it's going on the list.
Their new album just dropped in March.
I saw
Apocalypse.
that. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that.
All right, Jim.
I'm with TJ here. It's definitely an A for me. I really enjoyed this album. Thanks, Kellen, for putting Rotten Sound back on my radar. I haven't thought about them in a long time. I actually did go out and try to find this today on vinyl, but I literally couldn't find any on vinyl. Just CDs that people wanted $25 for, and I'm like, nah, I'll hold out. But no, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Again, if you're into the metal side of hard, grindcore rather, I think this will definitely have an appeal to you if you haven't heard it. And I think there's plenty of here for staying power. There's plenty of here to go back to and kind of rediscover, because there's a lot of riffs going on, in a very short amount of time, obviously in the songs, but there is a lot of really cool riffs there, and some definitely, if you can move your neck fast enough, head thrashing time.
Good luck. Yeah.
Riffs here. Yeah. Good luck on it. But it'll be worth the effort for sure. So yeah, definitely an A for me. I think this is an awesome grind record.
Kellen, obviously you liked it. You picked it, but
yep. So yeah. I give it an A. But yeah, I think what listening to it again this past week has affirmed is this is not something that I necessarily go to or that I can even sustain rarely as like a conventional part of my musical diet. Like I can't always have my foot on the gas like this. And what sort of the affirmation that this record or CD gave me was that I had no problem spinning this back to back. Like I spun this just today, sitting in my office like 4 or 5 times. And a grindcore record rarely gives me that kind of experience. Usually I need to sort of transition out of it. So it's just a testament to how well this album is written. And the last time I touched base with this band was on the record that followed. I think their first one on Spine Farm, which is the Exit, I think. Yeah, 2005. I actually haven't. You mentioned that they released a new one this year. I haven't actually listened to Rotten Sound in a while, so I don't know. I think they're on Season of Mist now. Yep. Good for them. And this record though is one of my favorite and takes me back to, this is my Master of Puppets. So, right on. Or at least like the records from this era, to kind of put a bow on it was to go back to a time period where, we were thinking about formative time periods when we were listening to bands. Like it's this time period for me, and it was cool to experience that again.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, no complaints. Again, I have it. So I was sent it as a promo back in the day, Hole Punch. And I haven't taken it off the shelf in 21 years. And it was awesome to re-familiarize myself with this band. Would I today, if I found some of this stuff used, I would probably pick it up because it's cool to have. And it isn't a slam against the band. I'm just not, like Kellen or like Tim. I'm not usually in the grindcore zone. If I am, I'm listening to World Downfall. I'm listening to something else. Rotten Sound isn't at the top of the list to pull, but it could be. It's good. It's solid. It's worthy. I'd give this a B+ all day. I think it's good. Good stuff. So yeah, that concludes the grindcore section of the album club. Very, very nice. I think it's Jim's turn to pick. Let's get him up here and see what path he's steering us down for next week.
All right. So we've been pivoting hard away from Metallica with the grindcore. So let's go even further away with some old Gorgoroth, baby. Come on now, bring it.
Oh, TJ's like, damn it. Look at taking notes. He's like, must leave Not feeling so good, guys. Not gonna make
TJ's
it.
like must quit album club. That's all.
First thing to do tomorrow, quit album club.
Well, I know
No, I
I'm
think-
excited.
I do like them. Pete, I've hung out with Pete. Super nice dude. Okay, Gorgoroth. Let me put in for those off. Under the sign of hell. It shouldn't be a long one either. So TJ, you'll be able to spin it double times.
And yes, my question, we will talk about what was up with the 2011 re-recording of this album and get everybody's opinions on that. So interested to talk about that. So, but yeah, I definitely love this era of Gorgoroth and would like to break this one down. So
yeah, Pest. I mean, the hat guy was also really good. Him and Pest were very similar, but it's good. I always like Gorgoroth. Good shit. Good pick. Yeah. TJ, any final words?
Just wait. I'm already stacking them deep, trying to figure out. Wait, it's like I'm gonna get you, man.
I'm gonna get you, sucker. Yeah. Well, okay, a little bit of show notes for us. Friday, tune in at 9:00 Eastern time. Melanie from Melanie Loves Death Metal will be with Alan and myself. We will be going through the entire Slayer discography. So I think it's a ranking. I don't know for sure, but yeah, it's a lot of Slayer in the house right now. Anybody have Jim, anything going on that you want to promote or pimp or any of that good stuff?
No, not right now. I got really intrigued by one demo, but didn't quite work out. So nothing new on the Eihwaz front, but just go buy stuff.
Links in the description for sure. Kellen, how about you?
Next thing for me, I'm taking a little bit of a YouTube break. I'm not over here like Marty Worm, who's prime time. I need a little bit of a back-to-back was a lot. So I'm gonna be off the YouTube for a little bit. But no, next video on my channel is gonna be a focus on the modern Chilean thrash scene.
Awesome. TJ, obviously we've got some news coming.
So we got the test pressings back for the forthcoming Cemetery Paths LP. Got those listened to last night. So hopefully 90 days from now, maybe.
July 28th is the projected release day.
Yeah. So
just
there'll be
we put it out far enough to make sure there was no problems.
There will be some promo stuff, some singles dropping, some videos, all kinds of cool rock star stuff featuring this guy and that guy. So be on the lookout for that, and here it comes.
Here it comes. Okay, cool. That's it, gentlemen. As always, it was a pleasure. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for hanging out with us and contributing to the chat and listening to the picks. That it's cool that a lot of you folks actually also do the homework. It's very cool. Very cool community we have here. But until Friday, I bid you adieu, and everybody, see ya.